What is cracking, everyone? Welcome back, Red Zone Sports. Diving into week 2 college football here on DraftKings. Hopefully, everyone, once again, has had a good start to the season. We had that, kind of week 0 game or 5-game slate or whatever it was. And then last week, we really popped things off. Huge early slate, huge evening slate. I did okay. I feel like overall we were on a lot of the right guys that you needed to have. I was a little too lightweight on some teams like Pitt and a few others, but I think overall definitely had enough, cashed a few. Nothing major. Definitely there was some room. Week 1's always challenging to figure out who's going to blow teams out. Who do you want to go to based on ownership, all that kind of stuff. But we're starting to get dialed in here. We've got a little bit of data on our side, which we'll get into here for the main slate or the early slate on DraftKings. However, did rebound quite well. I think it was Sunday nights on that Boston College, Florida State game. Sunday or Monday, I can't even remember. The days are starting to kind of blend together here now that football has really popped off. And I was that last run from Kyle Robichek's at the end of the game from taking down a showdown. Would have chopped it either way, but ended up splitting, I think, 3rd or 4th place for a couple $100. So that was nice. If you don't follow me on the socials, I'm at the Notorious VJL right here listed right below my name, right there. And always posting, always talking through the news that's breaking. So follow me there if you don't already. And also hit that like button and subscribe if you don't. Let's jump to the slate. We have another really big one here. We have some really good games and some games that I think are very clear stayaways for me. So let's jump to it. I'm going to go with a little bit different of a process here. So let me know in the comments if you prefer this way or if you like how I was doing it previously, whichever is more helpful for you guys, I'm happy to do. But just trying out some new things here. So game 1, we have Kansas State going to Tulane down in the Bayou. We have Kansas State as a 9-point favorite, 28-point team total. Tulane implied team totals around 19. Let's start. Just being honest, I don't have a whole lot of interest here on the Tulane side of things. I think Mekhi Hughes at running back 6,300 is obviously their main weapon. However, Kansas State's a really good team. I think it's going to be tough sledding in this one for him in the running game. I'm not a believer really in the quarterback Darian Mensah in this one. Even though they should be trailing in a good game script, I don't really see the path here for Tulane and hitting value. If Hughes was cheaper, I might have some interest. Same thing with Mensa, but I think for those price tags at 6,400, 6,300, it's a little bit tough for me to get to. Mario Williams, their number 1 in the receiving game. He's at 5,400. Could be a decent one-off in my opinion, but I'm probably not going to be going to the Tulane side here in this one. I think Kansas State absolutely rolls them here. For me on Kansas State, I do have quite a bit of interest in Avery Johnson's one of my favorite quarterbacks on the slate. The price tag is right, 7,500. I think he's coming in right now a little bit of sub 10, around 10% ownership, which I like quite a bit. I think he just has a massive ceiling, and with his rushing ability, I think he definitely has a pretty good floor here as well. So Avery Johnson at 7,500 is going to be one of my favorite quarterbacks on the slate. I think DJ Giddens is also very much in play at 6,600. Very similar to Avery Johnson. I think he's got a high floor here and a high upside coming in at decent ownership as well. In the receiving game, you've got a few guys you can look to. I think you can look at Jace Brown, who is at 4,800. He is going to be pretty chalky at this price tag, rightfully so. He's in a very good spot, but he's going to be trending probably 40% ownership is my guess on this one. 4,800, though, is a really good price tag. You can play him stacked up with Johnson, or you can play him solo as a one-off, no problem at all. If you want to get to a few of the other guys, it's probably Keegan Johnson or Dante Cephas. But I would lean Brown just because, again, the price is right and the production was there in week 1. Moving on, Kansas, Oklahoma State. You've got the Cowboys 7.5-point favorites at home with a 35 implied team total. Obviously, really healthy there. Arkansas coming in as the dog on the road, but they have a 28 point team total as well. I think for starting with Arkansas, I think these guys are still in play. Oklahoma State, they will give up some yardage. They will give up some points. Obviously, again, Arkansas has applied for 28 points here. I think all these guys are very much in play. Taylon Green is a good option here, 7,500, another guy who will use his legs. Jaquindon Jackson, the bell cow there for Arkansas, he's coming in at 5,200 on the price tag. Great price tag there. I think he's got high upside. And then in the receiving game, we'll see you've got Tesla at 5K, Luke Haas, 3,300. And then we'll see if Armstrong, I think I did read that he was practicing. He is in play as well, I think, in the receiving game. We'll see what Armstrong kind of does to this mix as far as playing time, routes run, those kinds of things. But I think if he's in, you can look to him. Same with Broden. Those guys are all in mix, but I'd probably lean to Tesla as well as Armstrong if he plays. But again, Taylon Green, Jackson, both very much on my play or in my player pool this week, both coming in at pretty low ownership as well. On the Oklahoma State side, Alan Bowman, 8,400, creeping up there in price, but he's going to be virtually unowned, it looks like, here on Saturday. So I think he's in play for that reason. They have such good receiving options. I think he's going to be in play all season as a distributor of the football. He's not a massive playmaker himself with the legs or anything, but he is probably good for two or three throwing touchdowns per week is my guess in this offense. So they're going to put up points. However, as always, most people are going to gravitate towards Ollie Gordon. He's a tough one, man. He's going to be all season long. He is the most expensive player, I believe, on the slate at 9,600. However, he is also projected for the highest points on the slate, and he is probably going to be the most chalky player on the slate. So you got to make a decision on Ollie Gordon. Either start your lineups with him and ride it and try to get over the field, in my opinion, or you fade it and you hope and pray he goes for 25 points or something like that, and you can get direct leverage maybe in the passing game, or one of these other cheaper backs can kind of keep you close to it. So, but he's in a pretty damn good spot as always. They're going to ride him, and he's going to get all the goal line work as well. So Ollie Gordon, as always, really good play if you can get there price-wise. And I do think there's enough value if you want to do it. In the receiving game here, Brendan Presley, 7K, great play. Rashad Owens, another really great play. And then Dejon Stribling at 4,800 is a little bit cheaper. So you can go with any of these guys, obviously, if you want to game stack this up or just stack the passing game. So Oklahoma State, very much a good play here. But again, they are going to get ownership, no doubt about it. Texas, Michigan, I'm not going to go too deep here. I think Michigan is got a lot of things to figure out after last week. They're going to be very low owned, but I really don't want to mess with this because they are probably going to rotate quarterbacks. We saw they're going to rotate running backs, which was not really something I love to see with all my best ball teams in Donovan Edwards last week, with Mullings in the mix. And both of them being extremely expensive, I'm just not going to be playing this. Same with the receiving game. I just don't see it. Colston Loveland is probably the safest on the slate. However, 6,700 is just a tough price tag to play when you have guys we just talked about, Rashad Owens, Brendan Presley, both guys on cheaper or more expensive that are just absolutely going to get more volume and more opportunities in an easier matchup. So I just don't really love this Michigan side of the ball. Texas, on the other hand, again, Quinn Ewers really expensive. Jaden Blue's up there a little bit in price tag. I think if you're going to go there, I think Wisner is probably the play at running back, just because of price tag. You're saving $2,400, and he has big upside for big play breaking ability. He can also pop in a touchdown for you. So if you need to save money, I think you could go to Wisner. In the receiving game, they've got a lot of guys in the mix. Obviously, Bond, Bolden, and Golden. Nice rhyme. 6,800, 5,800, 5,200. Look, it's a tough matchup. They're in the big house. Michigan is going to bring their hard hats, and they are going to know they got to hold Texas to under 20 points to win this game to have any shot. And I think they can. I don't think this one's going to shoot out. I think it's going to be pretty close. I kind of want to take Michigan in the points after last week looking bad. I do think they correct here, but I just think the opportunities are going to not be there for Texas if Michigan can get the running game going and hold the ball. And again, if you want to take some shots, one-offs at the receivers or with Wisner, I don't mind it, but it's not going to be a game I'm stacking at all. Texas, Michigan. Best game on the slate to watch, but I'm not going to be stacking this one up for DFS purposes. Moving on, one game I will have interest in and be stacking is Pittsburgh at Cincinnati. It's a 2-point spread in this one. Both teams are hovering around a 30-point team total. I have interest again on both sides in this one. Holstein looked really good at quarterback last week, 6,500. The price is right. Desmond Reed, I called it last week. Once he got steamed up. Obviously, I wasn't the only one touting him, but he was in a great spot. He's 5,900 now. He went up about 1,000 or about 1,300, I think, if I remember correctly. But this is a guy who's going to get the bell cow type workload. And hovering about 15% ownership, I think he's a really good play as well. Again, in the receiving game, I think you could look to Kenny Johnson, Conta Mumpfield, or Raphael Williams. All three of those guys are definitely in play, and they're cheap, which is why I also like this Pittsburgh stack quite a bit. 4,400, 5K, 4,500. If you wanted to even go to Bartholomew, you could do that as well. So all these guys are definitely live in this one. Cincinnati side of the ball, Brendan Sorsby, 8K, more expensive, obviously, but he does, run the ball a little bit, use his legs. I think he's in the mix. Corey Kiner, not my favorite, but, he's definitely, you could play him, like no doubt about it. Corey Kiner, 5,700. He's going to come in sub 10% ownership, most likely. So I think he's doable if you want to look there. In the receiving game, Xavier Henderson is clearing away their number one. He is going to come in at very low ownership, and he has big upside. So I think he is your number one stacking option if you want to look to the Cincinnati side of the ball, or as a bring back for your Pittsburgh stacks if you want to do it. So I think this game is definitely live all the way around, but just be prepared. Again, it's going to get ownership, especially the Pitt side of the ball. So Cincinnati might actually be a nice little leverage play if you want to pick off one-offs from Pittsburgh, or if you want to play like a game stack, but stack up Sorsby instead of Holstein. Yeah, that's one way to get different and get weird. So I think I like that quite a bit. Bowling Green at Penn State, 35-point spread here to the Nittany Lions, 42-point team total for Penn State. Implied team total of 7 for Bowling Green. So needless to say, I will not be playing anybody from Bowling Green side of the table. On the other hand, Penn State, you could look all around this one. Drew Aller, 8,500. He looked really good last week versus West Virginia. I already said that. 8,500. He's in play. Nick Singleton, 6,700. We've seen it, and we saw it again last week. His game-breaking ability and able to just, be kind of stuffed up, and then all of a sudden he pops a 50-yard run. He's going to do it all season. One of the fastest running backs in the country. Katron Allen's in play as well. These guys split carries, they split touches, they split red zone touches. So I think you could look to either of these guys. Receiving is where I got it wrong last week. I was really big on Julian Fleming. He ended up with a fat goose egg. I don't know if there was an injury there or what the deal was. I checked Twitter. Everybody was saying the same thing. Like, is this guy even suiting up? Like, what the hell is going on here? It was the Harrison Wallace show. No doubt about it. 5,800. I would like to go back to Fleming just because he's going to be so low owned in this matchup. Whereas everyone else, Wallace, Singleton, Allen, and Aller are all going to get ownership. They're all going to be like 15 to 20% owned, if not a little bit more. Fleming is obviously people aren't going to play him just because after last week and getting burned. So I think if you want to look to Fleming or Warren, I think both of those guys are definitely in consideration if you want to do that. Obviously, I need to look a little bit closer as we approach Saturday to see if Fleming is in fact injured and what the deal is. But if he's good to go and he's rocking and rolling, I want to keep taking shots on this guy. He's insanely talented, transfer from Ohio State. I don't know what was going on last week. Who knows? But yeah, I would like to keep an eye on that one for sure. So earmark that. But Penn State, great plays all the way around. But again, they are going to be fairly chalky. Moving on, Georgia Tech is a 2.5-point favorite going to Syracuse, who looked pretty good last week. Georgia Tech, 32-point team total, Syracuse, 29. I think both sides of this game are in play, guys. Haynes King coming at 8,100. I think Jamal Haynes, we've seen him. We saw him, really get into the spotlight off of that Florida State game. I think both of those guys are very good plays. They're going to be owned. Don't be surprised when you see Jamal Haynes coming in at like 25, 30% ownership. That's what I'm thinking here early on. But I think King, Haynes in play. The receivers are the receivers. You've got Singleton at 5,800 and Rutherford at 55. Those are your two main targets. You can mix in maybe Chase Lane, but Singleton and Rutherford are their two main pass catching options. So if you want to look that way, those are your four guys that you want to look to. For Syracuse, Kyle McCord, I bet on him last week. That was great. He paid off for me. He looked really good. Syracuse let him, wheel and deal back there at 8,400. I think he's a fine play. He's going to be low owned. Tougher matchup here, obviously, versus Georgia Tech than last week. But I still think, for what he is, he's a very productive player in DFS. So I think Kyle McCord is in play here. Obviously, you then have LaQuint Allen, who is obviously much higher in price. He went up almost 2,000. He is going to garner a ton of ownership here. Also, right there with Ollie Gordon is looking like one of the most expensive or most chalky players on the slate. But rightfully so. I mean, he's used heavily in that offense. He's the bell cow guy in the backfield. He's going to be used in the passing game. LaQuint Allen's a really good play. Just know, again, at 7K, he's going to be very, very chalky. So just be careful with that, depending on how you want to do your lineup builds. Moving to the receiving game, I think Gadsden and Pena are probably the two best options if you want to go here. 5,000, 4,900. At least they didn't just completely misprice us like last week. And both are going to be, now that they're a little bit more corrected on the price tag, they're going to be more in line in terms of ownership, hovering, sub 10% for sure. So if you want to look there in the passing game and get off that LaQuint Allen chalk, I think you could do that no problem, which might not be a bad option. Georgia Tech, we saw, again, they kind of stifled Florida State or at least put up a fight in terms of their running game, but don't really know what to think of Florida State. They look absolutely horrific, and they can't get the running game going against anyone. So was it a false flag? We'll find out here. But this Syracuse running game is going to be interesting on Saturday. My local team, not that I root for them because nobody does, the Cal Bears go out to Auburn and take on Auburn Tigers. Let's see. Auburn is a 13-point favorite, 33-point team total. Cal, 20-point team total. I think Cal is going to run into some issues. I think Auburn's more talented than they were last year. I think their defense is better. But I do think there's some value here to play some of these guys. Don't totally love Fernando Mendoza here at 6,700. I think you can do worse, but I think there's some better options on the table. But if you want to get weird, he's going to be very low owned. Jaden Ott, one of the best players in the country, one of the best running backs for sure. My problem is he's 9,100 and he is getting some ownership here. I just think if you're going to pay that price tag, I'm probably just going to look to some of these other guys in better matchups, in my opinion. But I think Cal realizes that they have to control the ball here and they have to ride Ott if they're going to have any shot at winning this one. So I can totally see it. And I see the game theory if you're playing it out in your head. But 9,100 is a tough price to pay. Cal on the road in Auburn. I do think Grizel and Anderson are in play from a receiving options. Grizel at 4,800 and Maven Anderson at 3,800. 1% ownership. I think these guys they're cheap. I think they're good one-off plays to kind of fill out your lineups if you need some of those. Peyton Thorne on the other side, 7,800. Okay, I think you could do worse for sure. I think the price tag is right. Jarquez Hunter, I think same thing, 6,500. I'll have some shots on both of these guys. My favorite receiving option, and I've been reading and hearing about him, guys like Josh Pate have been talking this guy up all offseason. Cam Coleman had very limited opportunities last week, but damn, this kid's a freak show. I know everybody's talking about, the kid up in Ohio State, Jeremiah Smith. They're talking about Ryan Anderson, Alabama, but Cam Coleman is one of the other true freshmen who looks the part. So I want a piece of him this week at 4,500. Keandre Lambert-Smith, the transfer from Penn State, 6,400, a little bit more expensive, but good upside here from both of those guys. I think Robert Lewis is a decent option at 6,500. So if you're stacking it up, you can look to those guys. Rivaldo Fairweather, if you want to look to the tight end, another cheap one, you can definitely do that as well. So those are the kind of the main players and player pool for Auburn. South Carolina goes to Kentucky, or Kentucky's a 10-point favorite, 2016 team total. South Carolina, 16 team total. They looked really bad last week. Lenore Sellers, we'll see. 6,500. I think if you're going to go to anyone on this one, it's Raheem Sanders at 5,200. His usage last week was insane. The opportunities are there. Good price tag. He's probably my favorite play on the Cox side of the house. Jared Brown, Jacobs, those are probably your two guys in the passing game. Everyone thought Nick Harbor was going to come in and make a splash, and he did not. I saw people freaking out all over Twitter on this one. But I'm not really going to be attacking the passing game here. It's Sanders for me on South Carolina side of the ball. Then you've got Brock Vandegrift for Kentucky. Yeah, I think he's doable. 7,100, price is right, ownership's right. He's going to be lower owned on the slate. I think Sumo Karangbe, can't pronounce that, but 6,200 is a good price tag for him. With Tranium not playing, you saw him get the bell cow work last week, so I think he's in play. 5%, 6% ownership. I love that. In the receiving game, the guys you're going to want to look to are Berrien Brown if you're stacking the passing side. He's at 6,500, Dane Key at 5,300, and Macklin at 61. Those are your three main pass caption options, where Berrien Brown looks like he's going to be getting the most ownership on this one. Moving to the Battle of Iowas. Iowa State goes to Iowa. Both teams have under a 20-point team total. I don't think there's much here, to be totally honest. If you want to take a few cracks, maybe at a one-off in the passing game, be my guest. Jalen Noel or Higgins for Iowa State, 5,200, 5,600. Okay. Abu Sama really killed me last week, 5,500. I don't know, man. I mean, this is a really tough matchup. I think both these teams are just going to try to grind each other down. But low owned, if you want to take some cracks here, Rocco Beck, 6,100. I just don't love the spot here. Iowa's at home. They play really good at home. They hang their hat on defense and running the football. So, yeah, I'm not expecting a shootout. On the Iowa side, McNamara, Moulton at running back, or Caleb Johnson's mixing in as well. Luke Lakey in the passing game. There's just not much here. So I'm not going to cover these guys too in depth. If you take a town of GPP with one of these two stacks, please, the Lord, tell me, because that would be freaking awesome. But I do not anticipate that happening. So tread lightly, guys. Baylor at Utah. It should be a pretty good game. Baylor is a 14.5-point dog on the road. Tough place to play in Utah. I think DeQuan Finn, 7K is an okay price tag. They should be trailing. But I think the running game is where the value really comes in on this one. Richard Reese and Pendergrass they're splitting carries, no doubt about it, but both are cheap. 3,600, 3,800. If you're looking for a cheap back, or if you need someone to kind of round out in that flex position, I think both of these guys are in play for me. I probably won't be playing Finn too much. You can. He will use his legs. Maybe he can run around and make things happen. But again, Utah is just a really tough matchup and a really damn good team. So I probably won't be looking to Baylor, pardon me. On the Utah side of the ball, Rising and Kuthi are the two main guys that I want here. Cam Rising, 8,900. Just dude is like in his 11th year of college, just dominating all these kids. It's a little bit unfair, but whatever. I'm going to keep playing him because he's really good. The running game is typical Utah. It's a disaster. All these guys are projected pretty well. All these guys are going to get touches and mix in. Bernard, Stanley, Glover, and Mike Mitchell. I don't know. I'm not going to go there just because it's just a total wild card. But you're going to get all these guys very cheap. So if you do want to take shots in a tournament, be my guest, but also don't complain or cry when your guy is the one who gets two touches. But Kuthi in the passing game, if you want to look to Singer or Parks, you can. I'm not going to. It's Kuthi for me or bust with Ryden. Northern Illinois is at Notre Dame. I do not have any interest in Northern Illinois. We saw what Notre Dame did to what I think is a fairly good team, Texas A&M last week. Their defense is the real deal. I'll just not be going there. Just not going to play that. Notre Dame, on the other hand, 36 team total, 28-point favorite. Riley Leonard's in play here, 8,600. He's a little expensive for what I want to pay, I think, on this slate, but he is definitely an option. I think Jeremiah Love as well as Jadarian Price, 6,400, 7,100, split in touches. They're a little expensive for guys that are split in touches, but both are in really good spots. So if you want to play both of them, if you want to play one, I think that's not a terrible option in this one. At the receiving side of things, Bo Collins, Jaden Greathouse, Chris Mitchell, all these guys are right. But again, prices are just inflated a little bit here. So it's just a tough situation for me. I think if you're going to do it, you want to almost go full in and stack this thing and hope you just get it right. Notre Dame, puts up 60 points or something like that, and your guys get the production. But I think picking off one-offs here is a little bit challenging. At least how I see this one. The next game, Michigan State. State is a 9.5-point dog on the road to Maryland. 8 Chili's, 7K. Didn't look too great in his first live action last week. I will not be going there. Nate Carter split touches with Lynch Adams. And wow, Lynch Adams, you could tell, just had insane juice when he was playing there. I kind of like taking some shots at him. Shots on him at 4,500. He's going to be really low owned, and you could just tell when the ball was in his hands, the kid was super explosive and good. So if they're going to keep splitting touches, it's tough. But give me the cheaper guy who looked better last week in this one if I'm going there. In the receiving game, I think these guys, in my opinion, are just a little too expensive. But Foster at 5,900, Jaron Glover and Jack Feeling, 4,800, 4,100. Okay. I think if you need a bring back or something like that, or a one-off, you can look to those guys. They're in play. But I think Maryland here, 26, 27-point team total, favorites at home. You saw Billy Edwards look awesome last week. Price tag is good. Ownership looks good. He's going to be one of my favorite quarterbacks on the slate. At running back, Roman Hemby, same thing, 6,100. And then receiving, you've got just options on options. Ty Felton, Caden Prather, Octavian Smith. All three of these guys are okay to play. All three should have fairly decent ownership. All three are fairly cheap. I like Maryland quite a bit as a stack here. So for me, my top stacks are going to probably lean Maryland. I'll just kind of boomerang this back and scroll through my notes. Maryland, I like quite a bit. Utah, I like quite a bit. Let me scroll through here. Auburn, a little bit. Syracuse, Georgia Tech. I think Penn State, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. And then this Arkansas, Oklahoma State game and Kansas State. Those are the teams I'm kind of leaning towards. I know that was a lot. That was like 7 or 8 teams. I'll whittle this thing down, get a little bit more tight with my player pool. But I know this is a longer show, a little bit more detailed. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of this. Hopefully it was a good breakdown. Once again, if you're still with us, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, shoot me a message, drop in the comments where I was right, where I was wrong, and good luck. Let's take some money down this weekend.